Oh, look at this, that lovely blue. And you know what that shows? It shows that you're just about to get a really great learning experience if you can open up your virtual machines and gain access yourself. So we're going to be taking a look at databases, users, and granting privileges to those users on the database. So as we saw, we're going to be creating the database, listing our users, creating a new user independent of the grant command, but then also looking at the grant command to give access to our users, but seeing how we can use that and create a user all in one go. So this is going to be a great learning experience so long as you can get that muscle memory by following along with me in the demonstration. Come on, let's find that command line. And look at this, we're working on our Ubuntu 2 system, and we can go through and then run our sudo and mysql -u root, and then we can specify, well, we don't really need to, but let's just do it anyway, specify to go into our MySQL database. Now we can see our database context, MySQL, but that has little or no effect when I go through and say show my databases. So I can issue the command as show databases, and we can see then the databases that we have at the moment. Now, a lot of these built-in commands, we can make them a little bit more readable by using show databases in uppercase. For these, it doesn't matter about their case, but sometimes it makes it more readable when we see it in uppercase. And you'll see this more when we start going through and creating our objects. So we've got then our databases. We don't have any of our user databases. So I'm going to clear my screen. And then we're going to go through then and create database. So we can keep these in uppercase, but then specify our database object being the database name as create database sales. It works in uppercase or lowercase, but obviously if I put the name of the database in uppercase, I always have to refer to it in uppercase. But my commands can be in uppercase or lowercase. It's the convention to put them in uppercase to make them a little bit more readable. I can up arrow key to get back to my show databases, and we can now see that we've got the sales database. But at the moment, we haven't assigned anybody any rights through to it. And we don't have any other user account other than my root account. If I went through and cleared my screen, and again, trying to make it a little bit more readable, I'm going to go through and say select, then user. Now that's a column, and that has to be in the correct case. We comma separate our elements, our columns, and we want the host, again, that's in mixed case, from our user table. If I hit enter here, we can see we've got root at localhost. We can add in a where clause if we want. We've only got the one user, as we can see. But if I add in then a where clause, and we can specify then that our host does not equal, and then localhost. We're just quoting this so we know that it's a string we're referring to rather than a variable, and then the semicolon at the end. And then obviously we're getting an empty data set coming back. We don't have any users where the host portion of the username is not localhost. If we then go through and create a user, so create user, you can see where I'm now using the uppercase of the commands, just makes it a little bit more readable. Our user is going to be the user called Bob, but I say that's just the username. The at portion then specifies the host they're allowed to log in from. If I put then at and then %, they're able to log in from anywhere. But we don't want them to log in from anywhere. We still want to keep this secure. So we're going to add in then a 192.168.56.0 network. And the subnet mask we have to put in the dotted decimal format. So 255.255.255.0, and then close off our quoted string. Identified by, and this is where we can then say how we're going to authenticate. and we're just putting in a password string. So we can put any password that we want, but I'm obviously just putting password 1, as you can see, but you put another password if you want. Now, if we go back and list our users, we can see now that we have the Bob user and the host portion. So these can log in via the network, but they're not going to be able to access any of our databases unless they've been given rights through some other mechanism. So if I exit, clear my screen, and then I don't need to worry about sudo now, so I can go through and remove the sudo element. We can specify our user Bob. We can specify the host, and we can go through and specify that it's 192.168.56.102. And then let's not put the database that we're going to. We haven't specified the password. So if I go through and put then -p, I can put the password, or I can be prompted for the password. So let's go through and just be prompted for the password. And you can see then that I've gained access, but we're not using our database at the moment. If I try and use, and let's say sales, we can see that access is denied. We haven't granted the user rights. So let's go through and exit. And we've still only tested from our Ubuntu 2 system, but using the IP address of 56.102, we should be testing our network connectivity, and we have shown that we were able to connect. We can now go through and clear my screen just so it's a little bit more visible. If we go back in as our root user, again, it doesn't matter the database that we are in, and we can go through and use our grant to give permissions, all, or we could choose a specific permission, such as select privileges on then our sales dot asterisk. So our sales database and all objects within it, it'll be inherited for new objects that we create to, and then we can create a new user or use our existing user Bob at, and then we're going to specify that same network. And with that done, we can go through and put the quote to end our user and network. And if we are then creating a brand new user, we are going to have to put the identified by, but obviously for an existing user, we wouldn't need this. Don't forget the semicolons at the end. If we look in our history, we can go back now and see that we've got the Bob and the Mo users. And if we exit, I'm going to move across to my Ubuntu 1 system. And on here, we can go through and do a sudo apt install MariaDB-client. Just choose yes to accept. So we don't need to install the server, but we're installing the client. With that installed, we should be able to test then our connectivity now. So MySQL -h for our host, 192.168.56.102. Obviously, we could create a DNS entry if we wanted to as well, that's pointing through to this address. And we can go through and specify the user, Mo, and specify our password. And we can include the password on the command line if we want. But now when we go through, again, we haven't specified the database, so we're in database none, but we can then go through and specify our use, sales, and we've now gained access. We saw before when we tried this as our user Bob, access was denied, but you can see now we've granted privileges to Mo, we can gain access. And once we're ready on this, we can then go through and exit. And we're done and dusted with knowing the very basics of getting our Maria database server up and running. But let's summarize a little of what we've seen during this module.